We've seen media reports to that effect, specifically attributed to certain provinces. But there isn't a national program, as far as we are aware, or policy of some sort that has recently been adopted that talks to the culling of teachers. There isn't such. Do you want to follow up, Joseph?
Yes, I do. This has to do directly with the fact, with the national fiscus and the fact that the Minister of Education has the Minister of Finance has actually advised departments to manage their has actually cut budgets to the extent that provinces now do not have the funds to.
No, indeed. We all know that there are fiscal pressures within the system, that we know. We all know that there are measures to restrain levels of spending as a result of those pressures. But to the extent that there's been a program adopted to cull teachers, I'm not aware of that. If there was such a proposal, that proposal will require extensive engagement, not only with the president, but with a number of stakeholders. You will not have one department, whether it be National Treasury or the Department of Basic Education, unilaterally deciding on a program of that nature, because the implications are far-reaching. And so that will require extensive engagement, and that will require solutions to be explored before you reach an extreme position such as the culling of teachers. Yeah, I'll come. Yes, Jason.
Jason, before. Just on the question of the GNU, the language used by Minister Steenhuisen now has been quite strong. I think there was one sentence where he basically tells President Ramaphosa, "Do not sign this. This should not be signed. This should not go ahead." Will the president give any of this consideration, given that the DA is a key player or one of the bigger parties in the GNU?
I'm looking for that statement because I want to make sure that you and I are engaging over the same content. There's a section where the statement talks about the establishment of a dispute resolution mechanism as a priority, right? To ensure that all parties, and I'm quoting the statement, uphold both the letter and spirit of the statement of intent, right? So that's constructive, right? Because what does it say? It affirms the commitment of all parties that there must be a dispute resolution mechanism, that there is a recognition that there will be disputes, and that those disputes do not necessarily translate to a collapse of the GNU. Now, anything else said before or after this is neither here nor there. That will be what I take out of that statement. The rest, yeah, you can analyze it in whatever way you see fit, but that statement, that part of the statement is constructive. It's forward-looking, and it's positive. Malungelo.
I'm going to shift a little bit from the GNU and ask you whether, is the president satisfied with how his government is dealing with the issue of extortions in the country at the moment? Because this is something that's currently gripping almost every part of this country. Is he satisfied with his government's intervention on this? Yesterday, I was speaking to some people who had suggested that, in fact, the South African government is playing catch-up in most of these issues. Thank you.
Malungelo, it's a fair question, but a tricky one in terms of timing. Because the president tomorrow will be at the NCOP, and this is one of the issues he's going to respond to. So it may be inappropriate for me to tackle an issue that the president is scheduled to deal with in Parliament, if you get what I mean. So I'm not dodging the question, but let's wait for him to deal with the matter, and he's going to do so with some level of detail in his response. I hope that's okay.
Sir, I'm Llewellyn Prince from Network Film Twitter.
You can call me Vincent.
Oh, Vincent. Sorry. Vincent, I'm just on the issue of the dispute resolution mechanism. I've seen you also refer to it. Is this mechanism already established? And if not, when will it be established? And just another question that I have, are there any indication of whether there is when the next cabinet Lekgotla will take place? And will the issue of the NHI also be taken through the dispute dispute resolution mechanism? Because there are also some concerns from of partners in the GNU with regard to the NHI also. Thank you.
Okay, so Llewellyn, in the statement of intent, there's agreement to establish a dispute resolution mechanism. And as I've stated, one of the discussion items tonight at the dinner that the President will be hosting with leaders of parties who are signatory to the GNU will be the establishment and the formulation of the dispute resolution mechanism. And so if you think about it, we've had a flurry of activity since the signing of the statement of intent, the forming of government, the appointment of ministers, ministers working on the various plans that are informed by the priorities of the GNU. And so a lot has been happening. Now the timing is actually perfect to review where we are now from a GNU perspective with the political leaders, but also to listen to issues of concern and then start, mapping how those issues are going to be resolved. And so you could argue that it may have taken long for them to meet to establish the mechanism, but on the other hand, you have to appreciate the amount of work, including a state visit in the process to China. So a lot of work has been undertaken. That is not to say this issue was put on the back burner. It's not. The President, some weeks ago, in fact, that he gave the instruction that this dinner be organized and time found in the diary. So it's been an issue that has been top of mind for him. And finally, tonight you will get an opportunity to engage with the leaders. Hi, Paul, how are you?
Good afternoon, Vincent. Good, thanks, and yourself.
Good, thanks.
Sorry, I was watching you from the office. But just quickly, I wouldn't normally ask this question, but it is a big company involved. It seems that Starlink may be trying to enter the South African market. Does the presidency have any views in this? And I know it's a regulator's decision to whether they come in or not, but there's been quite a lot of criticism about not allowing Starlink and hampering South Africa's rollout of broadband, which, I mean, for almost 30 years, we've been talking about rolling out broadband, and the results have been, let's just say, less than optimal. Thank you.
Well, it's a matter that Minister Malat is seized with, as you are aware. Some weeks ago, ICASA issued a notice inviting stakeholders to give inputs into how we regulate satellite-based technologies or telecommunication technologies. And so it will not be a true characterization to say South Africa prevented Starlink from entering the market. Starlink had concerns about our regulations, which they found to be difficult with respect to their business model. And so there's been no conscious decision to prevent one particular role player from entering the South African market. If anything, we would like to see more such companies enter our market, because the competition will be good for consumers in terms of product choice, or service choice rather, and in terms of pricing, right? And so what we have regulations that have been there for quite some time. And now you have a global market player that wants to enter the market. That player has concern about some elements of those regulations. And so it's only fair that the minister, engages not only Starlink, but other role players in the industry. But also it's appropriate, I guess, for ICASA to, say we have this new band of technologies now. How do we ensure that our regulatory environment is suitable to accommodate these new technologies? So that's really what the issue is about. But we should avoid framing the issue as if there's beef, as young people will say, between Starlink and the government of South Africa. There isn't any beef. What there is from the government side a desire to ensure that we open up that market and that industry for the benefit of our economy and consumers, but also then ensure that we have a regulatory framework that is conducive. And those issues, as you know, Paul, will be resolved within our legal framework and will be resolved in the best manner possible, where we will engage with all parties. But if you really looking for details, I think you should engage with Minister Malatsi, because our understanding is that he's on top of it, and the CASA is also on top of it, if you look at the notice that they issued some weeks ago. Patience, do you have questions from WhatsApp? Okay.
We've received a few questions.
A few.
Yes.
Okay.
So the first one is from TESS News Agency, and they want you to please just outline South Africa's preparations for the G20 presidency. How far are the preparations? How are they going? And also, will issues of the Global South be on the agenda on South Africa's presidency for G20?
Okay. Next question.
The next question came from Nkosinathi Shazi from Power FM. Let me just find it now. See it.
Means it's not there.
It is. Just 1 second.
Okay.
Got it. Okay. Nkosinathi Shazi from Power FM.
Sure.
Is government monitoring the upcoming US presidential elections? And will a change in administration affect the renewal of AGOA? The next question came from Sophie from SABC.
Mm-hmm.
The UN's SG, Antonio Guterres, is hosting the Summit of the Future ahead of the UNGA general debate. So the question is, will the president be participating at the Summit of the Future on the margins of UNGA? Construct the economy.
Okay, so let's start with Sophie. That's a program question, really. So large elements of our UNGA program have already been finalized. I just need to double check with respect to this particular part of the program as to when the president will be arriving in New York. So that will be determined by a number of other activities that we have here at home prior to the president's departure to New York. So I'll get back to Sophie on that one. TESS News Agency, yes, preparations are underway for South Africa's presidency of the G20, as well as the hosting of the G20. It's a massive opportunity for the country and the continent to have the opportunity to lead the G20, which South Africa will utilize to ensure that amongst other issues, the issues of the Global South are prominent, the issues of the continent are prominent, and for the first time, you will have the African continent participating as part of the G20. If you'll recall, the last G20 summit in India, Africa's membership of the G20 was adopted, unanimously. And so it is an exciting opportunity for us as a country, as a continent, as well as the global south, to ensure that all our pertinent issues that relate to economic development are surfaced and are dealt with some level of detail. The logistical arrangements and all of those other arrangements are underway. There is an interdepartmental team that's looking into that, and we will be in Brazil during different stages to learn how they've hosted, to engage our counterparts in Brazil with respect to their experience and learnings of leading the G20, and we will incorporate their inputs as well as others. A number of countries have expressed keenness in assisting us with the hosting of the G20, and so we'll be looking at how we collaborate with our partners, trade bilateral partners within the G20, to ensure that we host a successful summit. I understand that as early as December, the G20 Shepherds will be meeting here in South Africa in Pretoria, and so that will mark the kickoff of a number of G20 activities that will ultimately culminate to the Summit of Heads of State. Mr. Shazi, U.S. presidential elections. Well, everyone is following those the elections with keen interest. The U.S. remains the #1 economy. The U.S. remains an important and strategic bilateral political and trade partner to South Africa. And yes, of course, there is AGOA. We don't expect any changes to happen in relation to AGOA, but also in relation to the overall bilateral relationship with the U.S. We've had a constructive and close relationship with the U.S. through different administrations. And so elections are always fascinating, particularly the U.S. ones. We all maybe watched the debate in the early hours of this morning, and we've been catching up on some of the summaries coming out of that debate. But in doing so, we're not never so concerned in any shape or form that if this other candidate or another candidate wins, there will be a dramatic shift in our bilateral relationship with the U.S. And we're not concerned that there will be a shift that will impact the AGOA trade agreement. The Minister of International Relations is in Washington with a delegation to discuss a whole range of issues, amongst which AGOA will be part of the agenda. We hosted a very successful AGOA summit last year. Was it last year? Yeah, it was last year. And so far, we have no reasons whatsoever to be never so concerned that anything could happen to adversely impact or undermine that trade relationship. Is that it? Okay, Lindsay is quiet, uncharacteristically so. So that means I can now think about having lunch, colleagues, yeah? We're done. For my lunch?
Yeah.
I'll just have to find a fish and chips place somewhere here in the street, and it's not a fancy lunch, Paul. So yeah, down that side, I'll find a fish and chips place. Thank you so much, colleagues. Thank you.